My name is Jonathan Schultz. I'm the captain of Team Huge on BattleBots, and you're listening to the RoboCast.
Hello everyone, my name is 764 and welcome back to the RoboCast with myself, Steve the AmericanKilljoy, World of Woodrow, and the lovely Jonathan Schultz. Jonathan, I think this is the first time we've spoken to you when everything just seems to be going great with Huge. The last two times have been kind of sad.
I've got no excuses, it's just going well.
What have you been feeding that robot this year? I mean, something has happened. What has happened? What have you done?
Other people.
Right.
It's a lot of, confidence matters, how you drive matters, and understanding the strategy matters, and it can make things look easy that may not have actually been easy in the past. That's a lot of it.
This season has been. I mean, let's go to your record because first of all, wow. I mean, you look at the fights you've had. There's three serious contenders and a new robot. Starchild is a big unknown, but dangerous in its own right.
We had to fight them.
Exactly. Yeah. But the other three have all been in the bracket before. Two have reached the top 8. Serious opponents, and you just walked through it and fairly comfortably.
And look where Fusion was right before we fought them too.
Exactly.
Coming off of the Witch Doctor fight, and we were pitted next to Witch Doctor, and I went over and said, "How I see the weapon hub totally split open." I was like, "What holds your hub together?" And they said 6 half-inch bolts, and I was like, "Well." And I glanced at our hub with 6 half-inch bolts in it, and I go, "Uh-oh."
And yours is on quite a bit of a longer moment arm, so there could be much stronger forces at that base, at that axle. Right. So have fun.
And it's like, we should win this one quickly if we have a chance, right? And
sure,
I saw the schedule. First of all, the scheduling this year it's so great to have it all in advance and to know what you're up against, to prepare in advance. But yeah, we saw it and we said, man, these are 4 fights that we could really screw up. And these are 4 fights that we could really win, and so we got to do it right for each one, obviously. But like, this is kind of the opening. This is the chance. We've never really had a season that we could really go 4-0 in, and so it's like, all right, let's not blow it. And
you haven't. It has honestly been such a joy, to watch Huge this season because we having spoken to you a fair few times and outside of the podcast as well. We know you've been through the ringer, obviously with how things were in 2020 with the whole Hydra catcher. That was a whole thing, and then last season with everything that could hit you, everything could hit you.
Yeah, I mean, this season's lineup, 2 things can hit you. 2 things are very small and difficult to hit. Like it's again not an easy lineup for Huge, but you have made it look infinitely easier than I think anybody could think possible because. I mean, even from the off in the Shatter fight, what a fantastic first fight out for Huge, and I think it really set the tone for the series for this bot.
Yeah, and that was day 1 of filming. That wasn't like you get to think about it and watch bots fight. No. That was
straight out the gates.
It was last year because that's all I have to go on. And you saw in the fight when they raced across the arena, like from the corner, but we had no indication that Shatter had gotten a lot faster. And I know for me, I've got 30 feet of space. It's time to turn away and spin up a little bit. And you can see me. I'm looking at Huge. Right? Make sure to spin up.
And Shatter with a really flat floor at the beginning of the season where it hasn't been covered up yet. That's how fast it can go.
Correct.
That's when the mechanisms worked for the floor worked for the mechanisms, not their fault.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like it's. I think the more you know about robots, the more you know how scared we were of Blip. Also, a lot of people
that fight was like until you gave him
the hardest fight we had all season.
Yeah, until you gave him the brain surgery. Like it was Blip's fight. Like they were throwing you around. It was doing really well, and then the flipper stopped, and suddenly it wasn't anymore.
Yeah. It's the kind of hit that puts you on IR for the rest of the year.
Yeah, which was all we could do, right? Like we didn't expect that we were going to go through the base. We didn't really expect we were going to get too deep into it, spinning down or upwards. It was like, well, I just hope something breaks. Like the only way we can win this is judges where something breaks and we don't.
And sure enough,
we knew that, and they knew that, and they're like, well, okay, so if we stack on armor and just get hit for 3 minutes, we'll probably win.
Yep.
And that was, it almost worked.
Sure enough.
Yeah, and then
well, shall we?
Fusion was fun and Star Child was more fun.
Yeah,
and then...
I was going to say, yeah, the fusion capping was good, and then the visceral nature of killing Star Child.
Seeing Star Child, like I've never like Star Child was
I
so.
I saw some fan comments who were like, well, Riptide did nothing wrong because Huge, eviscerated Star Child, and then I kind of thought about that. It's like, we maybe could have.
Yeah. Well, you did help them in their merch adventures, though, because I mean, there's a lot of parts for Star Child to be given out to the world. By the way, code still works.
I was going to say we should address that we are once again sponsored by Robots for My Life.
We're as surprised as you guys are.
Yeah, that's a very good segue, Steve. I like that a lot. Well done, mate. That's you learned.
Use code RoboCast at checkout for, is it 25%?
25%. Wow,
good deal, guys.
That's a good deal.
It is a good deal. Let's talk about some fan questions, shall we? We've honestly, this is the most we've ever had. It was about 50 or 60 questions, and if we use them all, this podcast would be about 6 hours long.
No one would listen to it.
No, well, maybe. We'll see.
My mom would.
Hello to Jonathan's mom.
Hi, Mrs. Schultz.
Let's start off with a question from about 3 different people, which is Aiden Muted, Patrick from Team Heatwave on Discord, and also Lord Tommy on Twitter, who asks, what gave you the idea for Huge, and does Huge take any inspiration from Gabriel from Robot Wars?
More of like a new question for like people. Like, I know we probably talked about this before, but this is really more for new listeners. Like, where did Huge come from?
Yeah, I think it's a good question also, because if you have a very BattleBots mindset, right, Huge is completely out of left field. But yeah, the Gabriel connection is very, very real. It was, I had built my first robot, which was a small, tiny vertical spinner. And I was watching Robot Wars and BattleBots at the time. It was like 2016. And I saw how good Gabriel was doing and how resistant it was. And I said, well, I can just put A on B, right? So I took the parts from the vertical spinner, which I still have, and it hasn't run since I started building Huges. And I made the big wheels, and I figured out the gearing, and I figured out that it needs legs on the back and all these things. It was totally Gabriel derived. The first one was real rickety, but it worked. And that led to everything. So from there, it's definitely diverged a lot, where, I have different wheel opinions than Craig does. And he started going into spinners as well, and he does his own thing. And we've never really talked or shared notes or anything. But like the sizing was set from reading the Gabriel build logs on the FRA forum. I was just trying to figure out how he did this and how he figured it out and what the plastic was and how to make it all work. And it took us a long time to make wheels that lived up to what Gabriel could do. But consequently, we have a lot more weight put into other things than
just the sword and everything else. Yeah, absolutely.
So we got the spinner and the motors and everything to do with it. We need way longer poles because we don't have a big sword sticking out to get us back on our wheels.
Right.
That's a bunch of weight. We have to have the legs, which he doesn't have to have because sword. So it's a very diverged robot now. But yeah, the Gabriel connection is very real. And I just saw it and said, that really looks like something that could change the game up. I don't know how anyone would be able to fight it. The only person that ever touched the body in Robot Wars was Aftershock. And I was like, well, reach farther than Aftershock, then maybe we'd win, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And that was pretty much the genesis. The first one was messy. Built a few.
Isn't it always?
Yeah.
By your second or third time, I mean, the kids end up turning out better. I mean, the robots end up turning out better.
as the first child, we got here somehow.
Exactly.
But yeah, I always say build it, hate it, build it, hate it, build it, kind of like it, and that's basically what this was. Is
I'll always come back to what
I'm going wrong.
Yeah, I'll always come back to what Matt Spurk told us to be like. Did we build that first Kraken? Did we really?
Yeah, I know.
And then keeps rebuilding.
I like to think.
I remember seeing it with the air tanks in the head because us and Kraken were newbies the same year,
right?
Next to each other, and I was like, I hope they don't put me against that because
sure enough,
explode.
3 years later.
3
years later, sure enough.
Yeah,
you were saying, Jennifer.
Much better Kraken and much better Huge at that point.
I like to think that the Gabriel inspired Huge, which has then gone on to inspire Zadkiel, which is the new Team Gabriel spinner thing. Because I mean that thing's dangerous as well. And man, I just think that Huge has been the inspiration for something that was inspired by the team, and that's just wonderful. This is like come full circle.
I hope so. I hope he's not mad. about all this stuff, and I think Starchild shows there is a place in the show for other cool things. I saw a comment recently that was, you'll know that Huge is really settled in when people stop feeling the need to put eyes on them when they build their own. And I think Zadkiel doesn't have eyes, and Starchild has its alien head, and as people start to feel more comfortable using this, it's really good. Zadkiel is really good. Billy is really good.
Even I'm looking towards big
Undercutter Wumbo, really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this can work for a lot of and the little Starchild are really good. Like
absolutely,
this is a design style that can work for a lot of different people doing a lot of different things.
Yeah. Before you go too deep on Starchild, I bumped this question up because I want to ask it. At Zach you attack and at Signal Lost on Twitter. I'm sorry. So what are your thoughts on Starchild, both the Beetle and the heavyweight version?
Yeah. Different. The Beetle in particular, and how functional it is, how well it does. That's a really, really fatal idea for Huge. Like the Starchild that was at BattleBots this year still hit the front of our lids and just didn't hit them at full speed and kind of a glancing hit just due to geometry stuff. So it didn't end up doing anything. But that's not a highly armored area for us. And it can't be because of how few people are gonna attack it. We need that weight for other stuff. So in Huge related terms, we were fortunate that the heavyweight Starchild was having some, slower spin up issues and that sort of thing this year. But I think it's, they obviously didn't win fights, but it was very particular matchups for it.
They had horrible draws, kind of like how you have in the last couple of years, where everything was designed to beat it.
Yeah. And it's tough because it's like, it's not that you suck, it's that you lost 4 fights, right? And there's 50 robots here, and you just lost to 4 of them. Everybody would lose to 4 of them, especially if you handpicked 4 to kill it. I think it's extremely admirable to build it and bring it, just because it, you deserve a lot more credit for something like that than for building something copycat. It's in my opinion, a lot of people, and especially in our comments, are like, you beat the copycats. Like, they're not a copycat. If they are, I am, right? Because we didn't come up with the wheel either. But they don't know that. They're not a copycat. They're doing their own thing, and for that reason, to put yourself out there, to try and to fail is worth way more than saying, look how goddamn amazing I am because I just built Endgame and brought it. I built my own. And look, aren't I amazing at BattleBots? No, you're not. You did what somebody else did, and that's a lot of the energy that drives us, anyways. Is trying to do something unique and win with it. It's a lot more rewarding than copying other people, anyways. But like in that end, I think they deserve a ton of credit for sticking it through and doing all the fights. They wandered in to fight Gigabyte, and I think they knew how that was going to go, and they still
kept swinging for the whole 3 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, the whole, and you can't even kill it. Like they deserve a ton of credit for it. And if BattleBots will have it back, which I hope and expect that they would, and if they want to bring it back, I think it's a robot that can surprise some people, because it's definitely showed, what that design style can do, and the wheels are the wheels. We all know the wheels and what they can do, right? So
why not?
It should be not bad.
Yeah. Jimin?
Yeah. Chicken on Discord asks, how did it feel to see Huge really show what it was capable of this year after the season 5 and season 6?
That's a deeper question.
I mean, go as deep as you. Obviously, we know, having spoken to you the last couple of years, you have struggled, and you've not been, it's been obvious on camera because there's been a lot of emotion going on, and feel free to be as open as you like.
It must have been incredibly frustrating to not have been given, or not had the chance to show what Huge could do, because I mean, when it turned up in 2018, everyone was like, well, that's not going to work, and then it kicked bot. and
every string of it doing that was always met with an ice wave at some point. And nothing good could ever last for too long, and in that sense, it was very frustrating. It's the right word, I think, for just, it always seems to slide through your fingers, the bite force fight, that type of thing. Even Uppercut, we only lost because 2 PCBs had a component fall off of. The robot was mechanically pretty okay, and Uppercut was dead. It's like, damn it, we were that close. And it was always something, and in some senses that's very driving, and in some senses that's very disappointing. But so to have it actually work out well is it has the weight of all of that attached to it. It's not just that, Jonathan is happy because BattleBots went well. It's like, oh my God, after all of this, all these years, all this pushing, it really actually is here doing what it does at Norwalk. And it's here doing what it does at, all the local events. And we can do it. And that's, it goes beyond me. It's the whole team and the preparations and the fact that we came out running against Shatter instead of how we usually do. And, so there's a lot that goes into it.
You say how you usually do, but like even the first huge that came to screen, it was taking names aside from the mobility issues. It was really doing well until Ice Wave happened and then Bite Force happened.
Right. And I do, there's some stuff that didn't work. For Sunawayachi fight, it wasn't spinning up well, but that didn't matter because we just got destroyed. For Mammoth, it wasn't spinning up well, but that didn't matter because Mammoth. And for Riptide, it could barely drive, but that didn't matter because Riptide. But it was always it as the driver, you feel some lacking, some hope, like I hope this goes well. And then for Shatter, it's just like, nice, it just works. Let's go fight. And it's
I know
totally different mindset.
And I know it's always nice when Chris interviews you. It's like it's I think it's even in his mind, it's nice to see you smile. He always likes seeing you smile. Like even when even during the COVID year, the post-COVID year, you guys like let me see you smile because you're the mask and you like.
Oh yeah.
And I always love that. He always brings out the best in people.
I think that they really understand the people a lot, and they understand how much it means to all of us, and that we're thinking about this 52 weeks a year, and this is what you're building up to. So to have it all go well, I don't care if it goes well next year, whatever. We always have how well it's going this year, and to see it really doing what it was supposed to do. I don't think any of them. I challenge anyone to actually go back and watch 2018 and 2019, our glory years. Right, it was slow. It was spun up in like 10 seconds. We got away with it.
Watching the pace of
what the picture was always in the head.
All of the robots in 2018 and 2019 was slow compared to
watching in slow motion. It's so strange.
It's the wheel spin of 2018 that makes me laugh. It's like the spinning wheels. It's going. It's
very Looney Tunes.
It's gonna get there.
Yeah.
I can understand why I've heard from literally hundreds of people who obviously don't talk to each other and plan this in advance. The exact same phrasing of, that didn't look like it was going to work at all. I know. I agree.
That's why I built it.
Yep, because it's different.
Exactly.
One of my favorite videos of pre-huge is like when it's in the test box and your guys are like, what have we built? What have we done?
I can't believe it like moves and works. It hasn't. We knew the middle was iffy back then before it split in half, and we're like, I hope nobody hits it.
And nobody did, but there wasn't a force to break something. It's wonderful. It is yeah.
We almost split against Moist Pony. The bolt was coming loose.
Yeah.
Start to do this, and I was like, okay, we should probably stop. Whoosh, and then okay.
It evaporated. Question from Caleb Kempson, the author of Beers of BattleBots?
Illustrator.
Illustrator.
He draws the things.
He does.
It was written by Andrea.
I
like that because a lot of people will walk up to us and ask us to sign the page where we're getting ripped in half, and then I'll just kind of flip it to the page. W is for wheel or something where we're not. Sign
that one. He asks, how do you feel about having to fight a bunch of unconventional designs before being able to fight a metabot you were designed to beat?
That's changed over time. Probably if you asked me that question a few podcasts ago, I would have just been real grumpy about it. But it's something where just from understanding the motivations of the people who run the show and put the fights together and what they know people want to see, it's like we can't show up and say, I hope we don't fight Deep Six. It's not going to happen. We have a Star Child plan going in. We have a Horizon plan going in, knowing that people will want that fight someday. You have to plan for all of the anti-metas. The fusion plan was known before because it's an anti-meta weird thing. It's become rolled in as part of our preparations because we just expect at this point that we're going to have a lineup that's more something that there's one of, right? There's one or two hammer bots. So we'll get a hammer bot. We'll get hammer sauce. We'll get fusion. It's just, you got to be really ready for everyone, but then take that to heart and say, like, not just ready with the decals we're going to stick on the robot as we fight huge, but like, what would be our plan if we fought huge? Talking in the realm of someone else. Like, fought a lot of people this year that aren't kind of putting something together in the pits, and that's something we tried to at least have a plan beforehand what we would do in all these fights, just because knowing we're not going to end up with a straight string of vertical spinners or something like that. Like Cloud Viper, it's like 4 straight vertical spinners and overhaul.
Yeah.
Like he can absolutely dial in his vertical spinner plan first, and worry about anything else later, and that's going to lead to success for him. But for us, success means we have to fight every single weird object that has showed up. So on the one hand, it sucks because you want to fight the thing you're designed for, but on the other hand, it's like, well, at least the fans like it makes people have fun, and I think as long as we have the right mindset, we can be ready for it. It's not going to be as fatal as it has meant in the past with your mammoths and stuff, where it's just like we have no idea what to do here.
Right. Absolutely. Steve?
All right. Yes. So friend of the podcast, Charlie Hubbard asks, how can someone go from a Robot Arena 2 builder to an IRL builder? He's asking for himself, obviously. And also, does Gold Team still rule?
Gold Team does still rule. Just from a copyright aware mindset, Gold Team cannot rule on television.
Right.
Not owned by, I think, Viacom or Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Because we did look that up. And
soon, like, well, the thing is, Robot Wars was on Nickelodeon for a little bit. BattleBots could simulcast.
True.
There's somebody there that likes fighting robots. At least
we just roll up. I still have the shirt. Right, roll up with the black shirt with the Gold Team rules on the front, and just it's a team now. Don't worry about it. Iron-On Mauser logos. Robot Arena 2. That's for people who don't know, who are listening. I spent most of my childhood building virtual robots. Just because I really liked robotics, and I really didn't have the ability or skills or tools or any accessibility to go actually build them.
And that was the game of the time. There really wasn't much outside of that to be, to really stretch your creative muscles for design of these machines.
And it was also like 2008, so it's you're limited to what Google's going to I'm not be able to easily find it. There's no social media for me to talk to people about it. I'm like 12 anyways. Parents
worth saying, Charlie is still spending his childhood making robots in virtual.
Yes,
as an adult.
Married man now.
Honestly, I think that those years helped me a lot with keeping the passion alive, which is super important. Keep the passion alive until I'm at a place where I can actually build it. It was always the goal for me. But then also, I think it helps understand a lot how things interplay with each other, right? The mental picture in your head of what happens when end game drives forwards towards me, and what do I hit first? It's very important for Huge because of our reach advantage. We want to know what we're going to hit and that sort of thing. But I think that mindset would help a lot of teams, and for people who don't play the ground game much. If you run head on into somebody covered in wedgelets, what do you think is going to happen? It makes sense to me, but maybe they're not thinking in that mindset. But I think it helped the mindset a lot. On a technical level, though, it's near irrelevant. And I really had to admit to myself that I didn't know anything and learn from scratch. 3D modeling is so different from how these games work. I haven't played some of the newer ones, so maybe they've come more around the corner there, but building for Robot Arena was its own thing, and I had to I used connections I made through that community to get knowledgeable about building real robots.
We have a question about that later on. We'll save that one right for the end.
But yeah, it was a lot of people who I know now doing real robots who I met from then, and then they helped guide me those earliest steps and say, use this mode or do this thing, answering the hard questions, and leaving me to do the design and make a working, boring small vertical spinner, which I made first, and then leading to this. So yeah,
brilliant. That's good stuff.
Amy Bloomfield on Facebook asks, what made you decide to keep going after several years of adversity? Was that a hard choice to make? I've ended up with all the deep questions. What's going on?
Totally not planned at all.
Therapy is expensive, and this is a lot cheaper. So it's...
yeah, good.
It's not something we haven't thought about, though, right? It's I have an answer for it anyways, but it was something where it felt like if Huge was showing up every year and just getting obliterated by everybody, then it would almost be an easier question, right? But it really been torn limb from limb since like Son of Waiachi and kind of Deep Six, but even then we hit their pulley and knocked out their blade early before he touched a frame or anything like that. Like it always felt like there is this nugget of potential that it's still very defense oriented of a robot. And if we can just get there on the technical side, spin up, keep spinning up, drive right, solve all these problems that we didn't have to solve because we fell into wins in our earliest years, then we'd have something. And it was that kind of image in the head of like, well, it still hasn't achieved peak huge. If peak huge sucks, it's an easy choice to retire. And there's a lot of those times during it where we talked about it because it's just really hard to do year after year after year, and convince the sponsors that this is the year, and change what we think is important and miss something else, and so it was hard. But I think that what was there was the kind of idea in the whole team's heads, because we all have little huges and stuff. It's like it's never really worked like them, and we know that the little ones win everything. So how do we get there, right? Learning about spin up, learning about this. Like most people would learn that before going to BattleBots, because you wouldn't build a good enough small robot to get onto BattleBots without that knowledge. We were winning fights in spite of ourselves for a long time. So we were able to climb the ladder really fast. But that now means that you're learning those lessons at a scale that takes a lot longer to learn.
So like almost you were running and then you had to relearn how to walk, sort of thing.
A little bit, yeah. And that's 2020 huge. Well, we could probably have questions about it later and we'll get into that. But like that was the turning the corner from let's do it, or let's try and optimize certain things, and oh god, we don't know anything. And nothing worked right. And that was where it started to build what I at least think of it as like a technical, knowledge bank of how do we do this. And we didn't have to answer those questions before, because everything before that was like just copying other people. Copied the wheels, copied the weapon shaft from Tombstone, copied the motors from Witch Doctor. Okay, great, we're geniuses. Give me the bolt, thank you. And we weren't really like doing our own, our own. I mean, we were, but like we didn't know enough to know what we didn't know. And it took a long time to answer those questions and learn that. So
fair. I'm actually going to skip a few questions here. I think we'll do one more, and then we'll start with the episode recap. We'll go with Tara Fisher, a friend of the podcast on Facebook, and she asks, what is the story that you've wanted to tell about your time in combat robotics that you haven't had the chance to do so yet?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think that the story, I mean, I could tell 100 on this angle, but how collaborative and community oriented a lot of it is so underutilized by the show and unspoken. And you'll see it in matchups that happen, but the show doesn't cover that Skorpios and Jackpot are great friends, right? That sort of thing. They just make them fight each other and then not talk about it afterwards.
Correct.
But in Tombstone Ragnarok and Monsoon, same thing. There is really no huge without a lot of other teams, but there's also a lot of other teams that come to us for things, or that we try and help with, or try and source Tegris with. All the Tegris us and Star Child and Mammoth used this year was the same.
I'm pretty sure, I can't remember who it was. I might have heard it somewhere, but like there was like, oh yeah, the entire supply of Tegris in the United States was consumed by the three of you.
the entire available supply.
Incredible.
as far as we could find. And a few other teams had found some too, and I think they got there first, which might have been why there was not so much, and we were buying offcuts that mostly
I reckon tactical that is. They were trying to buy the supply before you had the chance to.
Yeah. Well, I have 7 wheels in the closet. Starchild, on the other hand, was freaking out because they didn't. It's so community oriented, and how when we're talking about how you push through bad years, a lot of that is friends on other teams also telling you that you have a good robot, stick with it, you'll be fine. And I could list half the teams in the building as people I consider close friends, and that's the kind of thing that helps push you forwards. But then also, Rory Mangles is famous for his knowledge of the speed controller, stuff like that, where you're relying on
the unnamed speed controller.
one of many, but the one that we all use. But like that's the thing where it's not just that we're relying on these people to like make a part for us or something. It's a better robot because we know these people and can rely on their information. And then vice versa. There's Tegris on half the robots now. You know, we've talked to a lot of these people too in the opposite direction. And that's where I think that the show really benefits from having that. And all the stories are just like, you know, Leanne and Fred from Valkyrie in 2018 driving to Connecticut to finish Huge in a Rampage weekend after the crate had already shipped, and it was going in Earl's truck to drive across the country with Bale Spear. Like that happened. Well, no, it went into Charles's to drive to New Jersey to go to Earl's truck with Bale Spear and Overhaul to drive across the country. That happened. You know,
the whole Witch Doctor thing last year or a couple of years ago with the Al Kindle sourcing the metal and everything else.
And Lilith from Sporkanaut picking it up because she had a truck. And Zoe cutting it on a water jet, and it's these things. There's so many stories I could tell like that of like me showing up at WPI with a log of aluminum at midnight for them to machine it, a log of aluminum and Domino's pizza at midnight.
There you go.
For them to machine drive pulleys through the night. We showed up to BattleBots 2019, I think, with like one spare drive pulley, if that. Because we ran out of time to make the pulleys. Wow. And hey, robot, you have big machines and your robot already shipped. If I show a log of aluminum and pizza, will you make this for me and make it so the robot functions right and can exist at all? And pulled an all-nighter just making those pulleys, and it's always something like that for Huge, and then vice versa when it comes to like the Tegris stuff. Now that we've done enough years, have enough parts already ourselves that we can provide to other people like that. That's I think the best story of this group of people, crazy people who meet each other once a year, is how much we all help each other and you know, work together.
100%. We'll have some more questions later on, but shall we crack on with
Let's do it.
Our first round of 32 episodes? No. It's
I like
great.
telling stories.
This is great.
Yeah.
This is the content that people really want. Again, this is now a massive spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the episode, click off now. Go and watch it.
I say hoof because this episode was a doozy. So
we'll get to it. Let's start off with Jackpot and Witch Doctor.
I've seen that get better.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to recognise how Witch Doctor is a sensational machine, and the fact that Jackpot is getting beaten so badly is a testament to how good that is. For the first sort of 10-20 seconds, they did struggle to get a proper engagement into a Jackpot.
20 seconds is generous.
But as soon as they did,
it was just lambs to the slaughter. And the ace trying to figure out, where's my mom? Where's my mom? Help. How do I help?
It's gone.
I'm alone now here, aren't I?
Yeah. There was a moment early in the fight where the ace gets underneath Witch Doctor. I'm thinking like, oh my God, it's going to work. Jackpot's going to get their big hit.
Waited for so long.
And then Witch Doctor just kind of just slides off. And from there on, it's hard to watch.
There's the shot right at the end where it's side on and you see that enormous like kind of bending in of the AR, and it's all like it's like this far off the floor.
Grisly. It was completely grisly.
Yeah, this was visceral. I give all the credit in the world to Jeff driving the spot like he could, you know, but it was hard. It was hard to watch, especially when they get them against the screws and it's just facing away. And I'm like, Mike, this hit, you might not have to go in for this hit. It's already dead. And he just shoves the disc right into their rear. And it's at that point, it's over. But that was a rough one. But man, what awesome damage in this fight. What a way to start the episode with something like this. What a way to pull people in. Because this Jackpot that had the best season. You know, they've had two pretty good regular seasons leading up to this, and this year going 2-2 to get into the bracket. I think they'll be. I think they were, you know, I feel like they were in good spirits.
If you look at bracket, but I think the issue with Jackpot has in the last couple of seasons certainly is the caliber of opponents they've fought this season is a much bigger step.
It's forward. A huge jump. Yeah. No pun intended.
No, of course not. if you had a nickel for every single time someone said that, you could pay for a new huge. I'm sure
I could afford to build heavyweights. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I've picked up Anderson's puns ever since he stepped away from the podcast. I feel like I've had to like pick up the slack there.
I mean, Jevon, you saw this as well.
Yes, I'm going to do a thing of drawing back the curtain. So I'm the only one here this week who knows the order of the fights and when they were filmed and everything. So this was the third fight out of the bracket. There are two more fights from this episode, and I think it's not. No, so there's a mix of fights from the first filming session and the second filming session. So yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, ow.
Yeah, that final shot of Jackpot.
I think
rough.
From the stands, it was very
so
much
cinematic as it rolls out
rolls away,
and then the reveal, right?
Oh,
it's like, oh my god!
It was very gruesome, very very gruesome. Watching from the stands, just sort of going, ooh, oh no.
Were you guys on blue side or red side?
We were on red side for this one,
okay.
I think.
Okay.
Were we? We may have been in high five. No,
in the splash zone.
I don't remember.
Splash zone or the butt view, as I've called it before.
BattleBots, yeah.
As BattleBots, yep.
No, this was grim.
I mean, there's a lot of things in Jackpot that keep it running even when things are bent, and he'd noted some of the wheels were still turning even after all of that. This just one of those things where in a lot of fights, and this is something we learned and informed our design with Huge. In a lot of fights, the guy who gets the first meaningful hit is probably gonna do the rest of the meaningful hits and win. And to some extent, the tougher you build your robot, you're just gonna take more of those hits, right? Because the Jackpot weapon was dead, so the ability to turn the fight around was not gonna be high. They're gonna do their best, but it's just a tall ask against Witch Doctor.
Yeah, 100%.
It almost sets them up for more, right? You almost wish it was more fragile and it just died earlier, and you can keep some parts because, well, congrats, it never died, and here's what you get out of it. And
I suppose it's good that if something catastrophic happened to Witch Doctor, I suppose it's a benefit, but
right,
that doesn't happen.
And that's not a bad strategy against a lot of opponents. Witch Doctor,
yeah.
I mean, wow.
They're ranked 3 for a reason, right?
Considering every fight they've not turned their spinner up to full speed, and I don't even know if this was full speed. Like I feel like
it was 75% for this fight.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it's an ominous thought for anyone who has to fight it later on. I will say for Jackpot, going out at this stage, ending the season at 2 and 3, they lost to Skorpios, but unfortunately.
Yeah.
Who was their other loss to?
I was also struggling to think of that. They beat Ribot.
They did beat Ribot. Who was their first fight?
Skorpios was their first fight.
It's been such a long season.
I know. I feel
RotatoR.
Yeah,
that was in there as well.
And they struggled in Rotate was
and
back
then
to
they
full
beat
fitness.
Shredderator was the last one.
Yeah, a half dead Shredderator.
Yeah,
and half dead Jackpot also.
Yeah, I think so.
Floating around a lot.
To then be given Witch Doctor I feel like is kind of unfair, but
it is. But also that is how the bracket works. The number 3 faces the lower.
You got to fight who's in front of you. There's no way to get around it. If that's how they're ranked, they're ranked, and your goal is to get in the bracket, and then whoever you fight, you fight. I mean, that's
right.
Just
and
the
at
way
some point in the bracket, if you go far enough, you're going to fight Witch Doctor or something that looks a lot like it. So
you say that. So your quadrant of the bracket is very interesting because
we'll get to it. Let's progress
a little. Suffice to say, I love the whole Jackpot team, and we were pitted next to them last year, and they're a lot of fun, and they helped us a lot this year and last year with some parts that were broken, trying to repair them. But I can't say I was rooting for them in this fight just due to the bracket
because they might be able to reach you. Unlike
they can touch stuff, and I don't like it when people can touch stuff. And I saw Ace get under Witch Doctor, and I was like, "You get out of there!"
As much as you like them, there's still a little bit of like, I don't want to fight that. No, I'm good.
And it sucks because it's so hard to pick a favorite, right? In anything when you know all the teams and you're rooting for your friends and everyone's your friend, right? So you just have to zoom out mentally and be like, well, this one's going to be better for us than that one. So
fair.
Go get him, Mike and Andy.
Absolutely. We'll save Witch Doctor's opponent until we get to their opponent's fight. In the meantime, I feel like I need to eat some humble pie and apologise to Jevon Woodrow. Because I had Lucky down to win this one. And for a second, when it turned Hypershock over, I thought, hello, here we go.
Yeah,
this is looking
possibility.
Will hasn't quite worked out this whole gyroing over thing. Smashing face into wall to
Yes,
self-right. Now that he can do.
That's a
Yes.
move.
I will give Matt credit for keeping Lucky going for the entire 3 minutes.
Yep.
But that robot was sad at the end of
Yeah.
it, wasn't it?
Very, very
Goodness
sad.
me.
Considering that the flipper section this year is one single billet of aluminium, I believe.
Mhm.
And it was that kind of shape by the end of it.
It kind of failed at the pivot point here.
Yep.
And basically, at that point, it kind of the whole thing just failed upwards. And that's
A lot of stress concentrations around a void on a piece
Yep.
of billet that you made. That'll happen.
Impressed it was still attached.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to go. Like the more it kept slowly, the angle kept going more and more, but it didn't quite have enough
Didn't
to.
quite-
Just reach. I don't think Hypershock could hit it far
That's
enough.
why, yeah. Very true.
It had to bend it back the other way. It had to fatigue more. You know, it had to wiggle it more. It's like a loose tooth. Yeah. This was
a great thought, Steve. Thank you for that.
I'm sorry.
in my heart, it's like Lucky's. I don't think they get enough credit for how good of a job they did this year and last year and other stuff. And it's tough when you run into buzzsaws in the round of 32, and they did. But yeah, Hypershock doing Hypershock things. That's
Well, they literally ran into one in their previous fight with Cobalt.
that too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that was
trying to recover from that.
We heard that in the pit.
Yeah, you heard that in the
Like
pits.
it was about a second delay from the TV to the reality, right?
Yeah.
You just hear like thump on the TV. It's like,
Yeah, Bill Dwyer described it as an M80 that went off in the box, and I'm like, "Yep, that's about right."
God, I hope nobody died.
Yeah,
it's a sound
this is
you
it, it's over.
felt you didn't hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, this fight, oh my god, I was nervous. Sat in the stands. Hypershock didn't get further than the round of 32 last year, and it didn't get further than the round of 32 the year before. Probably shouldn't have been in the round of 32 the year before, but
or the year before that.
Or the year before that. And it's just
us.
This robot has flattered to deceive every time out, and for them to make the top 16, I'm happy, but I know what's coming.
We'll get to that later.
We'll get to it later, but yeah.
I will say again, this also wasn't all plain sailing for Hypershock because you see straight away one of the chains just falls out the back.
They're
of the
dragging a rear.
It locks up completely, and it just carry on.
That was the best bit. It's like I was like, I don't care. I've only got 3 wheels. This one's still attached. Let's just keep going. And it still had more drive power than Lucky. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Now you can start to see why I love this robot, because it's.
Start to see.
I mean, you should be able to. I mean, even its destructive power we saw last year, that's not even the main reason I like it. It's because it's a fun robot that will just carry on regardless of what happens to it. It loses a wheel, sod it, carry on, go. And it's all action all the time. The team is incredibly fun, and yeah.
It's a robot that shows momentum really well too in a fight.
Yes.
When it's winning, it's really good at the combo hits.
It's very good at keeping the scale tilted in their favor. Absolutely.
And then on the other hand, when it's upside down, it's very hard to.
Yes, 100%.
But they're getting better at that. And turning its high back for themselves.
Their most famous fight.
Still can't believe he sent it into the wall.
Yes.
Like we talked about Robot Arena 2 earlier. Like it's a Robot Arena 2 move.
It's such a Robot Arena 2 move.
But the thing is, this reminds the NASCAR clip of the driver who drives around the wall at the final corner.
Yes, which is Ross Chastain, which is now illegal. You can't do that anymore.
You can't do that anymore. but that is the equivalent of this in Robot Combat. Like he drove at the wall and it worked.
I think I remember.
But in BattleBots, everyone's just like, cool.
Yeah. do it again.
Sat in the stands. Stood in the stands for this one. Come on now. Me and David are stood there just watching the fight, and he goes over. I'm like, oh, come on, please remember you can self-right. Remember, and then he drives straight into the wall, and I can vividly remember the thought of that works.
Yeah,
it's a valid way of doing it. Lucky finishes at 3-2. I think we spoke to them. We spoke to them last week. Matt and Mark, and they're working on some new upgrades for Lucky, which we won't divulge into too much. But I'm excited for Lucky going forward because there aren't many flippers bots out there, and this is unique even amongst them with the 4-bar puncher. and it's still working really well. And I'm
New
excited
winning
to see
releases.
fights. It's winning fights. I mean, I mentioned earlier, Mammoth is some of our best friends, but watching them fight Mammoth last year, and then just the knowledge to wander up to the wheel as Mammoth is stuck in the fruit and just punch it off. It's like,
Yep.
that's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
It was wonderful.
Like, it's doing unique stuff that no one else can do, and it is fighting. You know, Hypershock's hard, Copperhead's hard, obviously, but Shatter Bro's a real vertical spinner, and we saw what it can do against Overhaul. Like Triton, it's fighting real opponents.
Look at Robo Games as well this year.
That was really impressive, yeah. And it's getting knockouts, which is extra hard as a flipper.
Correct.
So,
yeah,
they deserve a lot of credit.
Exciting times for Lucky. Hypershock we'll get to when we reveal their opponent a little bit later on.
Yes.
Fight 3. What a strange fight this was between.
This is a great fight.
It was incredible, but so strange.
Yep. And Donald did what he thought he would do. He'd put on a wedge on the back and do what he did to so many other horizontals at this point. Is just deflect their attacks and then wait for his shot. And
I must say, listening back to our round of 32 preview we did in the week, everyone was right in this fight. Everyone's predictions of what would happen in this fight happened. He used the rear plow. The wheels all got shredded. What else could you ask for?
The other thing we didn't say is we thought LockJaw would catch fire, and it was Bloodsport that caught fire instead.
Bloodsport caught fire.
And
there was a fire.
That's what lost them the fight, so they lost a motor.
It appears so. Yeah, it appears from at least an onlooker's view. Somebody can jump in if they know.
It is true.
Yeah, so it looks like a motor fried in the head that also helps them get back over.
Correct.
Yes,
It's exactly what
the
happened.
weapon is in the head. And
of all the ones that could fry, that's the one you don't want frying.
But you do get a nice shot of all of the people that put a little bit of money towards Bloodsport this year for charity, so that's fun.
Including, well, you put the money forward, but
yes,
it's my dad's name.
Yeah. Which I don't
He's
know.
gotten more TV time than David this year.
I think I have talked about it before, and it's the full circle of when I built Dooya, which is my Beetleweight robot. I designed these elaborate side panels that were really like fancy, big, sort of weird shape. Anyway, my dad hand cut all of those bits. It wasn't done on a laser cutter or anything like that. He used like plasma cutter by hand and did that shape. And we neatened it all up and it looked phenomenal. And Nick Buckles from Team Bloodsport was in love with them. He complimented them thoroughly. And so it's quite nice that it came full circle that my dad's name could then end up underneath Bloodsport, which I think is a really cool looking bot, and I still love it.
They've done a great job of showing that when you show up with a robot of a certain shape, you're not necessarily stuck with that, and you can change it up while still keeping kind of the soul, the soul of the robot. Yeah. It's still Bloodsport. It's still recognizable Bloodsport.
Yeah, they've gone away from
with it.
They've gone away from like the tornado Murr style hockey puck shape, where
it was a pretty shameless tornado Murr.
Yes,
in the early days, and showing you can make something of this that's unique. And
they had Bloodsport outside at one point, and me and David went and had a look and had a chat, and I hadn't quite realised until I had a proper look in person about the way in which they do the chain drive for the wheels, which is in the middle of the wheels. It's just such a cool little detail, a cool design that helps protect it a little bit more. It's just very, very cool, and I fell in love with it instantly and was like, why are there no more teams doing this? Like, it makes perfect sense that you want to protect it as best you can, and the safest place to put it is put it in the middle of the wheel.
Yeah. Just as long as those two wheels don't get pinched together. That's the only thing I can see happening, but that's that's me and my brain. But
I have to say, LockJaw absolutely fell into this win.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Their weapon was it was like this. It was all bent out of shape, and the irony
why they didn't light on fire was it stopped spinning.
Exactly,
right.
That's why. Obviously, they lost two wheels. They lost one from each corner, I think, and then Bloodsport comes in, hits the weapon assembly.
Yeah, I don't know what it hit.
And then hits the
floor.
Hits the floor, hits the weapon assembly on the way round, and then goes over, and that was... You can see Justin's reaction afterwards. He was gutted. Yeah. Understandably, because they had the fight, it was theirs.
Telemetry didn't see that coming.
No.
No, it didn't, sadly.
I'll tell you what, though.
Ouch, Jevin. Ouch.
Yeah, I know, right? the setup we're seeing on screen for LockJaw, the picture that's on the website that we still haven't seen, would have been a good setup for this fight, I think.
Maybe.
Would have been really good. I obviously, the backside
Bloodsport's...
plow is the right choice, but you combine that backside plow with whatever this is.
Weight.
Probably.
I mean,
must be weight. Yeah.
This shape you got here, use that as your plow section almost. You could.
Yeah.
One of
maybe.
the tough things with Bloodsport for normal robots, obviously, but I'm very good friends with Kevin from Claviper, and Claviper had to fight Bloodsport last year. Claviper has the full Tantrum style surround plow, and Bloodsport basically spent the entire fight hitting above it.
Yeah.
And you didn't need to use probably the bottom 80% of it for anything. And that's what makes them so unique is you'll design a plow for your vertical spinner or something like that, but they're not even going to touch it. They're just going to hit above it. And in this sense, you could see it with LockJaw's plow. They used only the top 20% of it. You need to. I mean, I say as me, right, who has no experience with building a wedge, but
there's no forks on huge. I don't think there
I
ever will
almost
be.
want to see something like find a way to mount the plow like 6 inches higher or something like that.
Yeah.
Like
Upside down even would have done it.
Yeah,
anti-wedge.
Put it up where they are, and I think that's a lot of why LockJaw lost the wheels and stuff is they only had
they were bouncing up
and
6 inches
on the plow. Yeah, and then just hop over the top and hit stuff. Instead, same to Claviper, hop over the top of the plow and literally rip the head off of it.
Decapitated the snake.
So yeah, that's LockJaw also a lot. You can say it's luck once or twice, but they've won so many fights by
doing the same thing, 100%.
Doing this, being there, taking enough hits, surviving. That's how they do it, and their record shows.
It does, absolutely. Their next opponent is Witch Doctor. There was a little cool segment where they kind of show, actually, these two have been here since day one of the reboot.
They're the last two.
It's incredible that they haven't
Shredderator, Hypershock.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That haven't taken a break, that have been in there every year.
Whiplash, I guess.
I don't know how they do it.
Whiplash in some form. Whiplash didn't show in season 1, I don't think, at all.
There was no splatter.
It was on the website, though.
Yeah.
There are 4 robots who have been in every series now, and
credits and they fight next week, which is awesome.
Well, 2 weeks.
Oh
yeah, first time ever.
Yeah,
never fought before.
No. Thoughts on that one, Steve? I mean, obviously you've.
Well, I mean, I think Witch Doctor's got a very good chance of winning the whole thing. I really think that this is going to be a really tough one for LockJaw, because I feel like LockJaw went this way, seeing the success of bots like Witch Doctor, where this is the way the sport is going. Let me hop on that train and let me see how well I can do it. And clearly LockJaw's proven that they have the mettle to do it. But I think this is going to be where their run ends. I had Witch Doctor as my preseason pick, so I'm sticking with that.
Okay. I'm of the same mindset as you, Steve. Honestly, I think Witch Doctor is on another level to LockJaw, sadly, but it'll be a good. I think it's gonna be an interesting fight nonetheless, with 2 excellent drivers. Okay, now it's time. I think
I don't want to touch it.
We're gonna have to talk.
We just skip it.
No, we can't. We've re-entered controversy corner.
Days without controversy. Let me just reset the counter.
So, first of all, let's start with the behind the scenes stuff.
Sure.
Which I've seen multiple accounts of. There's there's lots of. I don't know if you've got the rules up, Jeff. I don't know if you can get the rules up quickly.
I can.
Thank you.
I hate to. I
will say, so this fight was pushed back to the very last of the session. You can see now why. But yeah, so this was the last fight they filmed in session 12, which is the first of the bracket.
Okay.
And this fight's happened before. We saw this last year.
We did.
We saw this.
So the story goes, according to Sid from the Riptide team, who's did a big post about it, they were attaching their sort of claw-shaped locking bar as a hammer to make it look like a hammer bot. You can kind of see it in some of the photos. It's a bit unusual, but I'm willing to accept that as an explanation. Obviously, Eric comes over and has a look and investigates the machine. Hey, what are you doing? Go back and reweigh it, because if they're working on the robot, they have every right to be like, hey, go and have a look again. Then there's the weight discrepancy of 2 pounds. Again, scales,
that's the scale. It's got to be the scale.
I mean, it's a 1% discrepancy.
Yeah.
Again, I'll give you that.
You've stepped on a scale and stepped off of a scale and be like, oh, there's a little bit of wiggle room there.
Of course.
You always try to hope that it's a lower number.
Of course. It's often said when I look at the scale, it changes its mind at me. But,
Sure.
The flight, well, we'll get to the flight in a bit. The issue I have with the whole thing is Riptide's kind of defensiveness after the fight, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but like, if they hadn't given people reason to doubt, like if it was any other team, everyone would be like, yeah, whatever, no one cares. But because it's the same, how is it the same team every time?
Yeah,
come on.
Why is it when something always happens, it's always this lot? I feel
it's like
Professor McGonagall
or Marge Simpson just saying,
there you go,
saying, Riptide, what force of habit? Sorry,
been asking myself the same question for a couple years now. Anyway,
what was their first fight? Right?
Yeah,
I was still waiting. For something to go in the rules about how they had 2 hits on us before what anybody saw of that fight actually started.
Yeah,
they hit us twice from the false start,
which affected you.
We didn't know what to do at the time, but I also was on Adrenaline Mountain and busy. I wanted to kill robots, right? And it wasn't thinking with a straight head. But what happens when someone box rushes into hits in the final? That's still out there.
Yeah.
And
where do you put the finish line? Do we keep moving the finish line? You know what I mean? Do we keep like, where do we finally say, all right, that's enough? It's, where do you draw the line?
Yeah,
I don't know. And I hate to even have this conversation because these are the conversations we shouldn't even be having. This is a fun sport. We go and fight robots, and that's the bottom line. There shouldn't be any of this, and it turns my stomach.
Yeah.
So
and it's a tough one here because on some cases, right? Like we have a photo of Huge after our fight, which comes up later in when we talk about it. But and Riptide is getting pushed behind Huge at that moment. And this is before they fight Shatter, but after the reweigh and the drama. Because if you see in the clips in the battery tent, Huge is the only team that's behind the scale.
Yes.
We're all standing there.
Yep.
And we have no idea what's going on because, and they cut all this from the show, the entire Riptide team comes running into the tent. They're all screaming at production people. They're screaming at Mary, who is the only Shatter person that came along. They're berating people, and you put it on the scale. You touch it. We're not touching it. That's why Don's the one lifting it.
Yeah.
All that. And we're like, what the hell is going on here?
I'm amazed they kept it in the show, by the way.
Compared photos, right?
Yeah.
Pre-fight, post-fight, during the fight, and then what we had of the photo. I don't see any extra top armor. I don't see any extra bolts.
Nope.
Only
Doesn't look
like
like anything
bolts
changed
in the top. Weight. And it didn't look like anything changed. I'm like, and it's ultimately my advice in that situation too. It's like, if you're not cheating, stop acting like you're cheating.
Right.
Because you act like you're cheating. I don't care.
Stop giving us reasons to look.
Right. Like, and they've used the Hypershock wedge thing as a defense, but Hypershock has come out and said that they put that all the way up the chain and got to Greg to get approvals on making modifications at that point.
I also kind of suspect that they had them already taken off, and it was just kind of like one bolt, like one very loose bolt that just took off anyway. That was the setup they were using anyway.
As builders, you're standing in line looking at the other robot. You know what's
correct,
attached or not, right?
Correct.
You look and you say, hey, I don't think that plastic's bolted to Jasper very well. I'll probably take that off when you make plans. And we did. And it's in that sense of just like, I don't know if it's a comfort thing. They are newer, but the communication is so important. And
they don't need to be so defensive. Sort of
No.
And we don't know the whole day beforehand, but that's BattleBots. You're going to be there for 18 hours a day. You're going to be working your butt off the entire time, and emotions will be high, and we've been on both ends of that. But ultimately, it's they can't put anything on TV that you didn't give them. And that's the whole.
I mean, as I said earlier, I'm stunned they kept the whole thing.
And then you can go back to your Airbnb and you can scream about it and punch a pillow.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
whatever you need to do to cope, right? But if you put it, there's a camera everywhere, all the time in the tunnel, right?
Yeah,
you are always have to be on when you're there, and I think almost next year we'll tell it more. But I think that this is them learning that in a much more public way, whereas most teams aren't 12-2 or whatever the heck they are by now, and they don't know that yet, or they don't have to learn that yet. It's more people pay attention when you're that good, and you don't tell anybody that your tip speed went up by a ton.
Well,
or something like that.
The thing is as well, like they had no need to be defensive because I mean, we saw the result.
Yeah.
They absolutely destroyed Shatter. And, you know, there's you know, obviously in the post show as well, we saw, you know, Adam come out and show the state of the bill.
Yeah.
It was just
the fight itself was incredible. Let's
Before
just talk
we do
about
move
that.
on,
The
I
fight was
do have
awesome.
the words of the rules here.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's taken a little while to find the bit.
That's okay.
Yeah, so it's 5.6.4. And if you want to bring up your own rules book, do so now.
Play along at home.
So, pre-match inspections. Prior to its match, a robot will be tested for functionality and also weighed to confirm compliance with the regulations. Once the pre-match inspection of a robot starts, no changes are allowed to be made to the robot, that involve the addition of any parts that affect the weight or functionality of a robot. Removal of parts may be allowed.
Right.
If during or after inspection a part is found to be faulty or damaged, BattleBots official may allow replacement of that part with a structurally and functionally identical part. Now, I think what they needed to do was be above board about what they were doing. If it
Communication. It's just communication. That's all it is.
If they were adding a thing, tell them you're adding a thing.
Just be honest and and don't cause paranoia through the pits. That's the word of the day.
That's a strong word
of the day.
Oh, it is. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah, you're right. I mean, look, the fight itself. I mean, Shatter, credit to them, despite having an awful season, gave them the best fight of the year so far.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he was still swinging the hammer even when he was like destroyed in the corner.
They went ham.
In our fight with Shatter, you look at, you know, their weapon worked until the end of the fight. And our whole strategy is to try and disable the weapon first. And then, like I said, that damage adds up and it leads to wins. It's a lot harder to turn a fight around than it is to win it in the first place. Their weapon lasted the whole fight. Blip's weapon lasted 20 seconds. Fusion lasted 20 seconds. Starchild's weapon lasted 20 seconds. And, you know, that's our whole strategy. It's a really tough build that they have. With the ability.
But Riptide hits hard, doesn't it? Oh my god. This was
and
hard to watch.
we knew from math last year,
prepping
to fight them, that they were around 170 or 180 tip speed. And so when they showed up a lot angrier this year of a robot, we're like, they had headroom and they're using it now.
Oh yeah.
It's quite the beast. You know, it's such a shame that we keep having these incidents because
this cloud needs to go away.
Because Riptide clearly is one of, if not the best robot in the field.
Good.
That's what I mean.
We were discussing it earlier today, Sam, weren't we? About this robot is scary and everybody should be worried to fight it because it could be anyone. I will say that we also discussed the fact that if it's hitting the wrong way, it explodes. Like I feel it's very glass cannon-y. They have said themselves that there are areas of it that are not well armored, and you know, you go for those bits, you get those bits, and Shatter is one of those robots that could go for those bits. This fight could have gone very, very differently for them. So it's definitely an interesting fight. It's an interesting rematch as well. I think. I like the idea of this rematch. It ends in the
same corner, though.
It does end in the same corner.
It does.
But I will say that if anybody stood a chance to beat Riptide, the first of those people would be Shatter, who fought it last year and know what to do, or know what they want to do anyway. It's whether they can then do it.
Execute
and
it.
Unfortunately, they couldn't here.
It's a tough game also with matchups, too. Right, a lot of Riptide's regular season was other vertical spinners, and I think we saw Bite Force occupying that same spot where when you're so good and so threatening, people want to see you against other top robots, and other top robots are invariably other vertical spinners, and it lets them be even more glass cannony to aim for that, which leads obviously to wins. But you know, the anti-meta challenges are so rare. Something like Shatter is maybe Shatter could pull it out this time, but if they had a more varied schedule, you never know where things go. It is very glass cannon. We knew that from when we were going to fight them last year. And it was their first fight, and the things have obviously improved since then. But we saw 5 different ways that the weapon was going to kill itself right off the bat, and knew it was going to happen. And just like, we have to last through that one hit, and that's their whole bet, that they'll kill you faster than they'll kill themselves.
Correct.
What they did to us, and it's what they do to a lot of people.
And then I suppose we have to talk about the post-fight incident a little bit. Again,
let's not call it an incident, because
it's just
being realistic of what it was is one team
rude.
were being rude to the other, and at that point, I'm all for not shaking hands, because you've not shown sportsmanship to your opponents in what you've said. You can't then expect that sportsmanship back.
Just that, like, the fact that you said, "Oh, they're being paranoid." No, it's within their rights. You've touched the robot. I'd say go and check it. Like, it's within their.
There is a right within the rules. I couldn't find the exact
100-yard walk, right? It's not that far. Put it on the scale. Prove your point.
Yeah, we didn't do anything. Okay, no problem. No harm, no foul. But the fact that we're so defensive about it, and then the fact that he brings up the.
I had heard from other people who were in the audience that there was much more interview than what was shown.
I will not go into what more there was, but there was more. It was unpleasant to listen to. There was a lot of swearing, bearing in mind that there's a lot of kids in the audience, and that was the case with a lot of Riptide fights. And I can understand adrenaline's running high, but at the same time, every other team is showing enough self-control to not do that. The actual.
I like having sponsors.
Exactly.
Presenting those sponsors properly.
Yeah, the things that were said were unpleasant, and I can fully support not shaking hands at the end.
Yeah. Which the stuff you won't see on TV. I mean, there is an editing.
They wouldn't broadcast it. They broadcast more than I thought they would. Honestly, in this whole thing, I thought the interviews would be cut. I thought the bit before would be cut.
They do a good job in a lot of cases of protecting builders from ourselves. Yeah. I can think too. We lost to Malice in the Bounty Hunters in 2020. And at the time, I was convinced that we'd gotten robbed, and I dropped a real angry interview about being robbed. And I watched the fight, and I said, "Wow, I was wrong on that. Yeah, we actually did lose. I really hope they don't show that."
I'm sure they didn't.
And they didn't. They were.
Of all people to like Adam's a nice guy. Why?
Adam's one of the voice for the builders.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is you can choose a lot of people, right?
Why him?
But you chose the elected representative of all the builders, who was largely elected due to speaking well and being convincing, and is responsible for a lot of the amazing things that this season had. Better than last season.
So the words, I've heard a lot of rumors. It isn't coming from hearsay. It's coming from teams who have issues going to Adam as the representative.
Yeah.
Right.
Of all people to choose, you shoot yourself in the foot. What are you doing?
Because it's better than having every team get a different story or share different things to BattleBots. And frankly, it's hard for BattleBots to hear from 60 different builders and try and balance all of our whims, right? Versus Adam will make a survey and we don't talk about it and say, here's what needs to improve. And some things like 4 fights instead of 3, and it all should be filmed, right? You can't cut fights for people because we all spent the same amount of money to be here. All these benefits of what this season has had, and that has made, in my opinion, the best season of BattleBots ever, is in a lot of part due to all the efforts that were made. And he talked good, and it's a tall order to, people are gonna empathize with him when he makes his case, in the same sense that people empathized with me shouting about Hydra when I was wrong, and you're totally attach whatever the hell you want to the robot, right? Yeah. But people watch it and they feel the energy and the emotion. They're like, hell yeah, he's right. And it's pick your battles. And Adam is extremely respected.
I'm gonna say right here, right now, BattleBots group, just stop, please, for the love of God.
No more context. That's the end. That's what we need to hear.
It's okay. They're not this deep into the community.
Yeah, I know, right? Anybody who's come from BattleBots group, who has formed opinions that don't actually concern whatever happened in this episode about any of the builders here, and you're watching this, please, for the love of God, keep it to yourself. We don't care. Okay.
And I think that what I learned from our time around the Hydra fight controversy was, I think largely the public forgets that everybody's a human. And that includes every aspect that humans can make mistakes, humans can change their mind, and humans have emotions. And in the same sense, Riptide and Shatter are both full of real humans who make real choices and have real opinions on those choices. And they're also humans who can change their mind over time. And Riptide can show up next year and if they don't like this kind of feedback, have a totally different mindset and, in my opinion, repair a lot of bridges.
I hope so. I really do.
Also, and change his mind and feel differently about things, and that's okay. What you see on TV is not 100% of everything, and it's not
It's a
who
reality show. Remember, it's a reality
Right.
competition show.
And
It's
by
on
reality, we
television.
mean reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's absurd.
I think they
reality.
largely do a very good job
Yeah.
of representing reality, and in this case, that was representing the real emotions of everybody. But is that who the Riptide team has to be forever? Absolutely not.
No.
Yeah.
They can learn from this. I like it when you see a new captain. Their first year's interviews are deer in the headlights. The second year's interviews are at least saying a coherent thought while deer in the headlights, and the third year interviews are comfortable. Yeah, you have to see yourself on TV a couple times to understand who you are in that context.
Unless you're Anna Zolnikov, and then it's just easy.
Then for some people, they've eaten.
Yeah,
right?
they've eaten. Yeah.
I want desperately.
We can't all have those skills, and I'm not sure.
Correct.
Riptide does.
Yeah,
but they can. I'm just saying that they can. It's not completely. The story doesn't have to end, right?
No,
I
can
agree.
change how you.
Life goes on, man.
It's incredibly difficult for me personally to separate art from artist, but I commend those that can. And doing this podcast, we try and be as impartial as possible. We talk about what we see, we talk about what we know. I really like the robot Riptide. It's me.
So do I.
It's
so
nasty,
does everybody.
And it
I would
hits
think.
bloody hard.
Yeah.
It deserves a win, but I don't want to give it to that team at the moment. They need to get better at talking to other people. They need to remember that other people are people too as well. And I think it's difficult, but I think they have the capacity to do it.
Yeah.
And I have told the team this privately as well. It's, if the show can go on without Bite Force, it can go on without
that Riptide. Correct.
Yeah.
And ultimately there's a line. I don't know where that line is, and I don't know if anyone's ever reached it, but you don't find it.
Yeah.
You guys built.
Don't be the first one to have something like that happen.
On the art side of things, this is one of the most emphatically tournament-winning capable robots that we've had in a long time. It's like I think the Tombstone comparisons are fair. That this is a robot that it's not just winning. It doesn't lose a hit like through the whole fight, and don't let that go to waste just because of all these other things. If you have to put on noise canceling headphones for the entirety of filming, do it. You know why? Because Paul did too. Sit in his pit with both noise canceling headphones on and just work on the robot and beat everybody.
Yeah,
if that's how you gotta exist in this world, everybody's different. If that's what you need to stay calm in these situations, do it. You're human too,
And I think, unless anybody else has anything to say on this, the last thing I want to say is that this community is the robot builders themselves are so wonderful in that they are, the camaraderie is amazing, and I think that everyone will move on from this, and I think the audience needs to too, basically. Yes. And there is a way forwards for everyone, and it needs to start sooner rather than later.
Correct.
Hopefully this doesn't age like milk in a couple weeks.
To get through this season first.
Yeah, okay, fair.
That's ultimately like the fans, especially, they'll see a robot that's struggling. I mean, we talked about Star Trek earlier, and I think that's apt. But just like, why haven't they changed it? Why haven't they fixed it? Right? You watch it over months. What you saw happens over 18 hours, like a couple of days. They're not changing it because they just fixed it. And
what, you guys haven't been out in Vegas for months and months and months, and there's every episode that comes out, you guys are still there working on the robot?
They pay me so much money. Right. It's the momentum, the energy, the emotions of a season. It's a train ride from start to finish, and you can get caught up in that. I probably wouldn't have, like I said, been angry about Malice had Hydra stuff not happened. That's the type of thing where you come in next season with a new focus.
Correct.
Our focus this year was finish huge. Their focus could be on how they want to be perceived, and you could get a totally different outcome. And the memory of the public is very short.
Yeah, so I agree. And I hope
we're going to be talking about this 2 years from now, potentially.
Right.
I hope not. And
I wish to go into next series with a clean slate and just expect nothing, and whatever we get, we'll see. Basically,
and that's the thing. Also, 2021 Riptide, none of this. And I think it was something I wanted to say that I hadn't said yet. Of just like when you're sitting for an interview, one-on-one with the producer, the questions are guiding, and I don't think he was there. They were, as a team, put in a position to say anything like this. In past seasons, they weren't trying to portray them as a villain, and I think that like I said, on seeing yourself and seeing your character, you may not realize it until they edit it up, and you say, "Wow, that didn't come off great." And we're just along for the ride right now of the film they got in October, and for all we know, they don't like that, and it's gonna be different later. There is 100 times I've told them, "No, I'm not gonna answer that," or I'm not gonna rephrase it like that, or in the dark, foggy tunnel, I say I'm not gonna do that when they suggest something.
Yeah.
And then they work me down, and I do the Jeb thing anyways. And I learn, I learn exactly why you don't, because they have been using that for.
Yes.
It's funny. We didn't include it. We had a request for you to do that at the start of the podcast. There we go.
That's the thing is they'll tell you to walk off a bridge so they can film it.
Correct.
Right.
That's for you, Ace Trainer Banana on Twitter.
Yep. Well, let's move on because I feel like we've exhausted.
I feel like we haven't talked enough about Shatter though, but I guess we'll have to move on. Like what's Shatter's future look like? Do they look like this? Do they come back with more hammers, more packages, smaller? Yes,
smaller, faster, better, stronger.
These are all things that Adam has said.
More bolts on the plastic to keep it on, because clearly it was working until it fell off. Right.
Yeah.
I'd rather have more bolts and less plastic than.
Well, that's the thing. They'll talk about it in the post,
and it'll do a lot.
Yeah, they'll talk about it in the post to this episode where they actually kind of used parts of emulsifier to, build up armor for Shatter. But I mean,
also, I think we were going to mention it here as well. There's a post show now. It's very cool.
Yes, watch it. It's unbelievable. It's one of my favorite things they've done in years.
It's so natural and so casual, and I love it.
Yeah, it's very tail of the tape kind of things where we kind of talk to builders and oh, what happened, what went wrong, and maybe learn something about a robot that you didn't know before.
And you see raw Chris and Kenny as opposed to.
We now know what that tall circular table is for.
Yes,
it's been behind the arena for 5 years, and now it's finally back in the open.
But I love it. They haven't used it since 1 and 2 on ABC.
I know they had it the whole time. It got transported to Vegas as well. I love it.
Just clicked. That's the same table from.
It's the same table. Yep.
Yes,
the other thing to note, we were there for the filming of those bits as well. So see if you can see us in the audience.
Yeah.
Yes, Jevon's about a lot. Let's move on because we've exhausted this fight.
Yep.
What a fight! Oh
Great.
my
so
goodness!
Good.
Yes.
and if there's anything that the whole discussion has taken away from this episode is that every fight was really good in this episode.
Really, I know.
And there was an extra. You got a freebie too. It was 8 instead of 7.
Yes.
Which I'm not bitter about going to YouTube for my playoff last year at all.
It's so funny.
Hey, they're broadcasting them all. It's the right outcome.
This is how it should be. They fit all 8. They fit in plenty of drama to make it a TV show, but they fit in all 8, and you got to see every fight, which is all
Correct.
Also, poor BattleBots sign, man.
Amazing.
The use of the BattleBots sign by Claw Viper to get underneath Mad Cat and hold it there, it was sensational.
So good.
This whole fight was just utter chaos.
Amazing.
And I know BattleBots have put the other fighters' fight of the week. This is the fight of the week.
This could have been,
hands down.
Easily.
I think they will end up doing a fight of the week bonus, and this will be it.
I hope so.
They want to get the engagement first.
Of course.
Yeah. It's so good. It has everything. It has non-spinner doing things that non-spinners we've always dreamed of them to do. It still has the big spinner hits. It has the funny moments. It
has Martin Mason. I mean, just give me a show of him, please. It's wonderful. It is just a joyous fight.
Yeah.
Split decision surprised me.
Yeah.
He's the counterpart to the bot whisperer. He's the bot shouter. He just sits there.
Please work.
Every good there must be an evil. For every quiet there must be a loud.
There's a dark side.
Yeah. I really want to ask Team Madcatter what the purpose of their lifting arm is, because it's up almost all the time. That's the only thing it's for, you know, but it's I don't know. It just looks like a weird aerial at the top the whole fight, and they just keep it out of the way. But I wonder if this is one of the fights where maybe it could have been used as more of an offensive weapon, but it always feels like it's something that it's just to get the bot back over. maybe I'm just looking too deep into this. But this is a really solid fight from both machines. Claw Viper showed that it can really stand up to the test of a really tough spinner. It did just come off of a fight against a really tough vertical spinner that unfortunately ruined its 4-0 chances. But all credit to Mad Catter. Calvin drives the rubber off this robot, and it really showed in this fight that it really has a chance to make a long run. I mean, there's bits and pieces of very good verts that have been in the field so far. You have a little bit of Witch Doctor, maybe a little bit of Hypershock with the crazy driving. There's a lot to like about Mad Catter, and I like the fact that we've seen an evolution of this robot over the past 3 seasons or 4 seasons. It really has shown.
4 years ago it was a Hammerbot, so
yeah, yes. and even the year after that they still had the hammer, but now it's just gone full metavert, which kind of you can feel about that how you want to feel about that, but
yeah,
it's a really impressive machine, and the team are great, and like these are the conversations we should be having about these bots and teams, where like it's nice to like I'm really happy for them to win, because it's a really good show. And I like to see Calvin win. And I was also curious as to why Kevin used his appeal, but I can see why, because all the cards were 6/5.
Ultimately, let's face it as well. If he doesn't use it, then he's out. You may as well use it.
I think there is a world in which he has a very slightly different argument and it gets overturned.
Yeah.
I think the argument he pitched was not the right one, because I think he was saying that he was the aggressor in most of it and forgot that he was upside down for some of it.
That's it. Yeah.
And also considered Mad Catter spinner died. So there's a damage component that I don't think would have gone beyond 3-2 here, because
you've still got a working
Claw
lifter.
Viper was fully technically functional.
Mm-hmm.
The lifter worked and the drive worked. Mad Catter took damage. Now, obviously, Claw Viper's lifter was damaged, which is right. But
it's not full functional damage.
And there's a nice slash across those magnets.
Playing cards, not eyes, right? Because the eyes say the guy who's been upside down for the last minute floundering probably loses. But it's more functional than Mad Catter was at the end. But it's a tough ask to say that when you've been upside down floundering, you should win.
Yeah,
correct.
I think this is the right decision at the end of the day.
I also want to add, this is the third different way in which they've announced an appeal decision. Like, we've had something completely different every single time.
None of which involving the fully drawn out, fully filled
green button
press.
Yes.
Green button.
Where is the button press? Go press the
there was so much
button.
discussions to get the appeal system about how to make it good for TV, and that was what was all settled on. And then none of it even
made it to TV. Unbelievable.
The show. You must do it within a minute of the decision being announced. You must go hit the button. You must talk.
I'm glad that you're saying this, because everybody must think that we're talking crazy when we mentioned this.
There's a green button.
There is a green button.
Is it? I was going to say, is it the old green square button? It must be.
It's the green square button.
Yes, it
and
still
it's
exists.
over by Mike.
Yeah, you have to lean over Mike's desk to press it, and it's.
Yeah.
And they film you the whole way. I remember watching Tom hit it for the Whiplash fight, Monsoon Whiplash.
Yeah,
and just he strolls on over. It's not a short walk. Green is big. And he makes a face and he does a thing and he hits the button and lights go, right? Ooh. There's a whole light sequence for it.
What?
Audience is going. And then
cutting room floor.
And then the show, it's just like some blocked font. Monsoon still lost, LOL. And
then... Jeff Jeffries, there you
go.
Jeff
Jeffries. There we go.
Jeffries. Claw Viper finishing at 3-2 for the season.
Yeah. What a season!
I mean, Jonathan, obviously, the story goes, obviously, you ended up persuading him to get into BattleBots originally in the first place by himself. I feel like the entire BattleBots fandom and community owes you a big thank you, because Claw Viper this season has been a joy.
He deserves a lot of credit, right?
Of course.
I am in the peanut gallery cheering. And in the same sense as I think a lot of our story for the last couple of years is also his.
Yeah, I agree.
You really have something here. And you really almost beat Bloodsport after you got your head ripped off. And there's something, keep going on it. And he kept going on it. I'll take my tiny credit that it was from between the two of us that came up with the idiot strap. My idea for that was significantly more complicated. I'm going to tie the lifter down to the front so it doesn't suplex anymore. But that's so, meaningful, right? Because how do you win a fight? You don't want to fight by dropping a vert on your rear tire, like he did with Black Dragon. You
Yes.
win a fight by holding and running around and ramming and doing all the things that it can do now. That
Like
he
he did against
figured
Robot.
out the technical side in
Correct.
one piece of rope, and that's the growth. It's the same frame as last year.
Mhm.
It's just how you use it and how you tune it and how much magnet is underneath of it, and everything to do with that makes it now this like mind-boggling.
It's a force of
robot
nature.
delivering on. Yeah. I have no, to look to the future of this fight. Obviously, we fight the winner of this fight, but I don't know what Claw Viper does to us. I don't want to fight Claw Viper. My reaction times are glacial compared to, like alley-oop dunks, right? He can go a full loop around us and then hit me faster than I can turn, and it's a scary robot because it's new, and new is so much scarier than like vert number 2094.
Yeah, something that's got a lot of hours on it. That an idea of a design. Yeah, this was a really tough pick.
My first time fighting something like that. Yeah, hypothetically, and we were very scared going into it that he'd win.
Absolutely, yeah. And this was a really tough pick going into the bracket too. I mean, this doesn't look like an 11 versus a 22. This is, with considering how Claw Viper did against Ribot, I was very much anticipating this to go very similarly.
And it kind of did to start with, but
that's what's tough with what I mentioned with Riptide. Good verts fight good verts in their fight nights, right? Because Mad Catter is an amazing robot, and it lost to two very good other verts. And one of those fights was really close, even with LockJaw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a 2-2, but is that almost reflective of the same 2-2 as some of the other teams? I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
This is why.
100%.
Well, this was the first fight out of that session, which
amazing.
is just my little tidbit, and it was a great way to start the session.
Yes, it was. Set the tone quite nicely, I think, for you, Jevon.
Claw Viper is still like my favorite robot also.
Of course. Of course.
It's
freaking cool to watch it do what it is intending to do.
Jonathan, now you said you don't want to fight it. You know you're going to be fighting it next season, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It can reach you for starters, so that's an instant yep.
Yeah.
There isn't going to be a giant gaping hole through my base plate, so it's still better than some of the other things that can reach me.
True.
I'm going to walk out with most of a robot either way.
Yeah. Speaking of things that can reach you, this is a bot that can reach you, but
of course,
huge. Let's
there
go.
You go. Skorpios. I mean, okay, so I want to bring attention to a good friend of all of ours, Craig Croucher, who asks, why do they have to put the good robots together? Because two very unique machines, two teams that, we get on with very well, but you get on very well with each other. There was I do need to bring attention to it because there's a beautiful photo that the Skorpios page posted where both teams are all in this massive group hug at the end. And it's wonderful, and
which the Facebook metadata calls maybe a picture of three people in text. Because it kind of tries to guess what's in the picture.
Three plus amorphous human blobs.
Yeah, I mean, talk us through the whole thing. I mean, talk us through. But first of all, let's talk us through the why is Skorpios and Huge like such a special relationship between the two of you?
Yeah, the fight is almost secondary with this talk, just because of how short it was. It's so. I feel like our story and our growth year over year is more talked about than a lot of teams, especially in the context of this year, right? But, it all comes from a place of showing up really clueless the first time and way underbaked compared to where I think a lot of people show up to BattleBots at. And our unfortunate pit neighbors, which at the time was a single table with no space in between them, was Skorpios. So here we are with a robot. We can't take the poles off of it. That version of Huge, you start the wheels out at the edges and you push them all the way in kind of a tug of war, but in reverse type way. There's a lot of shouting.
There's no hydraulic press big enough for that, is
there? We're literally hammering on them to get them in because the titanium came in oversized and it was the whole thing. Cool. Every technical question, we'd never opened up the motors, so we killed motors against free shipping. How do we fix this? Every single question. We turn to the right and we say, hey, Skorpios, what do we do? Right? Because it's Orion, it was Diana, it was Dan Chatterton, it was people who've been doing robo games for 20 years. And my first Motorama was like a year and a half prior to showing up to BattleBots. We didn't know anything. And they were extremely, extremely nice. They basically adopted us. They were our biggest cheerleaders through the entire bracket. And then going into 2018, you have to remember Skorpios' history was the Rumble where they got stuck in
Yes,
screws.
of course.
Yeah,
And
they
the
got
second
they got
Rumble.
screwed.
Right.
Yes.
And the second Rumble where they did
Like,
win, but it broke a lot of stuff and
Yeah.
didn't really do Skorpios things. So it was
Mm-hmm.
a mutual, like, really our whole row, because RotatoR was in our row too, who also had a dim 2016. A whole row was like this little group of people. Like, we're really doing it, guys. And
Can you believe we're here? I can't believe we're here. What do we do?
well, that's the same thing we were talking about the test box videos. Like, how did we get here?
Yes.
Designed and
Right.
built the entire huge in 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
The build was 2.5 weeks long. So a lot of the choices were just, what can I get right now?
Mm-hmm.
And Skorpios, they were a very large part of why that year was so magical for us. And we got to cheer them on, and it just made this connection. And after a couple of years of being elsewhere in the pits, but obviously hanging out still, we actually ended up pitted next to them again this year. But we were cheering for each other again the whole time. And then
Who'd have thought that you can actually make friends at these events?
Who
What a
knew?
novel concept.
I just wanted to build robots.
Right.
And yeah, anyway. So like we were cheering for each other again. We'd hang out in each other's pits, help each other with things, debate things. And fighting your friends it's very hard, obviously, but it's also very, rewarding, because there was so many silver linings of, one of these robots is getting to the round of 16, which we hadn't done in years and they had never done. One of these robots is gonna murder the other one, right? Both robots could do significant damage to each other. So we knew it was going to be a good fight one way or the other. And it was just where, with how the fight went, at least personally, I felt like I was losing for the first 20 seconds or so.
I'm going to agree. Like,
yeah,
take off those poles go, and I'm thinking, if Skorpios turned you over, you're in big
it's a
trouble.
nightmare. That's the worst nightmare.
And it's like, I compare it to, we lost to Mammoth and Hydra and then fought Kraken and came out and immediately got bit, and it was just, here we go again, right? And Skorpios,
that's right. Kraken had like that harpoon out the front of it where they could kind of grab and reach your
he's
body.
Like, he says, I'm going to bite you, and we're like, sure, and he just does.
He did it.
And okay, 0-3, right? We're done for that year. And same thing. I see the poles go off. They're running circles around me. I'm like, this is it. We're out 32 again. It's been 5 years. We're now huge, and it's just going to get, destroyed. And I've timed it because I've known about the fight forever. Their chain flies off the spinner after the first pole hit, and I hear it pit side or box side, and we talk as a team. And then they hit the other chain pole off because it was still spun up when the chain ejected,
and that was it.
And they have no spinner now.
Yep. And then like there's like 5-10 seconds afterwards, Skorpios is very dead.
It was like somewhat full murder from then on out. And so to the adrenaline hit to go from I'm losing to we have a chance to smoke was 10 real world seconds. And that, I think, makes the adrenaline so much higher of the fight. And then it just makes the emotion stronger of, oh God, I want to go have a big group hug with Skorpios, because that was like amazing.
Who doesn't want that anyway? Come on now.
Yeah, it's just like you feel so much more of just like, I need to make sure they're not mad at me, and like express A, that they're very scary, and B, that I hope we're still friends.
The robot, not the people.
Absolutely.
The robot's not okay. Yeah, we did what we needed to do. We came about half an inch from hitting a battery in that side too, so it would have potentially been even grislier if it had kept going. But it's like, it's just, it's a team you have such a connection with and you root for all the time, and it's hard to go through that. But on the other hand, it's super meaningful for us. This was our last big goal for the year. Show up, done, check. Win your first fight, check. Get past the round of 32. That was
it. Anything else is a bonus now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And anything else is freebie, cherry on top. We did what we came to do. We'd never won 5 fights in a year before, so that's that as well. High water mark. And I think you can see it in my reaction afterwards. There's a lot of shouting. That was the big, goal for us. And to go from so quickly to I'm losing to I have already won was
elation. Yeah.
So
let's talk Skorpios a little bit. I mean, obviously they end their season at 2-3. Strong start. I think the caliber of their opponents in their last 3 fights really stepped up.
It did ramp.
just a little bit. Going from Big Dill and Jackpot, with respect to those two teams, they are not Sawblaze, Ribbot, and Huge. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And I am remiss to put myself in the same group as Sawblaze and
No, don't
Ribbot.
you dare.
Now we are, right?
Don't
now
you
we
do
can.
not.
Okay.
Like, neither of those. I don't think either of those have had a higher seeding than you have. So, oh no, they did.
I know.
It's crazy.
It's extraordinarily cliche to say that I'm never going to feel comfortable in the high.
No, of course.
Anyways, but it's true. Like we're so used to having something to prove with Huge, and then that was a lot of the driving energy. But yeah, it's it's a tough matchup for Skorpios too. Like we knew it was going to be really hard for either of us. I think they put a good config together for it with the ears on the plow and the hammer saw and everything, and we did what we could with the armor on the face. But like, it's dangerous. There's no think and try another strategy. Like if my strategy's not working, we're just gonna die.
Correct.
And that's the danger of Skorpios. Yeah, they're 27 seed, but they also have won 1 million fights and 2 bounties and beaten Tombstone and like. Yeah. Just a good robot. I think it's still a good robot.
It really is. It really is. We will discuss your upcoming opponent a little bit later on. Yeah. But I think we'll leave that for a little bit. That simmer in the background a little bit because we know who you're fighting, but we'll get to it. Our penultimate fight of the episode was RotatoR and Copperhead.
This is a weird one.
Yeah.
This is a weird one.
I would like to be in Victor's head asking him, why did he start this fight upside down? Before
we do that, I just want to say congratulations to Victor for the birth of his baby.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, but strategy.
Why upside down?
Yeah,
Victor,
I want to be in that strategy meeting.
Leave the baby alone. Tell us why. Yeah. No, obviously not.
I'm very curious. Maybe it's just worry about maybe getting a really hard hit on that V plow in the front and have bad things happen.
What are you worried about? Because they ran without the thing in the middle to stop the buckling. You hit one of those side things, it buckles, everything goes wrong for Copperhead.
Two things I think
that's
is
what
the
I'm
reason
wondering
why.
If maybe there was some, if you run upside down, we won't run the bar thing. I don't know if there was like some behind the scenes thing like that, but I was wondering too.
There's a lot of mental gymnastics. I'm trying to figure out why.
I think it may be.
They could have been going for chains. They got multiple hits.
Yeah,
in the back, right? And hey, you get a chain, which Ripperoni had done in the prior fight.
Correct.
Yes,
I think the reasoning is they either want to cut the ears off. So if Copperhead goes over, it's then all kinds of problems for Copperhead.
It's beached. Yep.
The other thing I think it may be is if RotatoR does hit like in the gap, and Copperhead's drum catches it in such a way.
The gap. That's a completely different machine, Sam.
Stop it. Let me
I have an idea also, which is RotatoR's fight was a glitch last year.
Yes.
The blade bent up and hit the underside.
Yes. Exactly the same thing could happen.
Yeah. I think that's the valid. I think that has to be the reason.
But glitch has a wedge.
That happens where we overthink
the weapon.
Things. Sorry, go ahead.
I know we're all distressed.
The glitch has that front plow that. I mean, RotatoR has even used that tactic against another horizontal previously, i.e. Tombstone, and you know that it goes upwards. That's what happened with glitch. Copperhead doesn't have that.
Yeah,
I don't understand, but I think that what you were about to say, he got inside his own head. I think.
Yeah,
surely.
I mean, and there could be even something that none of us know, that he's just harboring the secret self-destruct button on RotatoR that would be triggered by starting right side up, right? Because we kind of have some things that I have in the back of my head that I hope no one ever thinks about.
You have a huge self-destruct button?
We have multiple. Don't ask.
Is it each team member? Do you each have one?
Just don't trust that Peter won't walk over to the other side. No, I'm kidding. Tell them to just punch me and then it's all over. No, it's like I think all done it if you built robots and experienced it, 100%. Where you just think that X will happen, then Y, then Z, then Q, and I'll win. But then also X will happen, then Y, then Z, then Q, and I'll lose. And a primary example of that is when we fought Gigabyte. We came up with an entirely new strategy for fighting Gigabyte, and one of those aspects worked and helped us win, but the other many were completely irrelevant and redundant, and from us worrying about that fight. And it's one of our new team members this year who's only experienced local events where you have 20 minutes to turn on a robot, said this is worse because you have an entire day to sit and worry, change stuff. And if you're just confident and stick with your robot, cards fall how they fall, and you still find a champion at the end of the day, and it's usually still the best robot. You all just sit and you worry, and it's worse.
Yeah, and we've always championed Victor as being like the king statistician. Like he has so many configurations for this robot.
His configs finally caught up with him,
I guess.
Well, we also said a couple of weeks ago last in the week even, that whoever beats RotatoR in the bracket tends to go on to win the championship. So Copperhead, well done, well done. Brilliant job, Copperhead. You know, you're this season's champion.
Yeah, we're saving a couple days. You've got the nut. It's all over.
We'll see you next year for the RoboCast.
I will say it wasn't.
That also
speaks
to RotatoR's quality too. Is it takes champion level robots to beat them, and if you for like their fight with Tantrum last year, they were not losing.
No, they were not.
End game so close, could have been another result. You know, unbelievable.
That could have gone either way too. It's never, they're never getting slaughtered, and they're always competitive against so many people. And I think they, especially this year, it felt very quiet how good of a job they were doing.
You know, they had the struggles at the start with Hydra. I mean, any team can struggle with Hydra, but
Hydra, it's amazing.
Even pre-Hydra, where you had to throw a whole receiver transmitter setup and just say bye and just start all over again with a different setup.
And the weapon issues they have as well.
That's a huge change to make it an event. How your robot controls. It's a huge change.
And you're right with the mention of one weapon motor instead of two. Right, fine with two and running one the whole year, like not even peak RotatoR.
No, it's not, and it's still in the round of 32, and still gave Copperhead 3 minutes. And
I feel like we haven't talked enough about. I was going to say we really haven't talked enough about Copperhead. Copperhead was limping on one wheel for a while. I feel like it's
the whole fight.
In most of its fights, Copperhead. It feels like it takes a lot for it to turn on the spot. I don't know. It just feels like it's heavier. It's denser. Like I feel like I don't know what it is, or maybe it's just my brain tricking my eyes.
I think there's a lot of weight sitting on the feet.
Yes,
and you get all the friction from anything. Right?
It always feels like it's dragging a little bit. You know, where it feels.
I do wonder if there's still some lasting problems from their fight against Ripperoni
with Pizza.
Possibly.
I don't know what exactly failed in it. I don't know if you guys saw a post or anything, but
I believe drive chains,
and also that's where all of its switches are, I think, as well.
It hit the power center because it has like a little push button on the back, and then
that'll do it.
When they hold that push button, it charges all the circuits, and then they click a button and it stays on. You know, so you don't have arcing on all your connections, and you don't have to change connections so they don't fail. Whatever. Robert did a nice post about that a couple years ago now, and about how Copperhead turns on. I recommend people check that out because it's interesting. It definitely hit that square, and that was just lights out for Copperhead. But yeah, I mean, they did their business. They did well enough, and you know, you survive to the bell and do more than the opponent. You're giving yourself a good chance.
In which Copperhead has gone to the bell this whole season. It's either knocked out its opponent quickly or been knocked out quickly. So it's interesting to see a full. It's interesting to see a full 3-minute Copperhead fight.
Yeah. It is a tough little brick. I mean, we've always known
until
that.
It isn't when somebody hits it very hard. But
you hit in a specific spot, but then there's any bots. I mean, when we talked about Riptide earlier, there's special spots where you can hit. You know, it's any bot can come apart.
Correct. Final fight of the episode.
It's all the game you play, right? If you build a robot that's impenetrable everywhere, you probably won't have enough of a weapon to do anything to anybody. So
make it out of lead, and it's a problem, right?
Oh, you're gonna go for Lego there? You've turned.
No, I've had a busy weekend of that this weekend. Our final fight of the
final fight.
Where have we seen this before?
The more things change, I feel like I've said this.
To be fair, this is probably the closest it's been between the two of them.
Oh, and that's saying something because it's been close almost every other
times.
time.
I know. Yeah. Interesting tactics from Tantrum, which I believe, Jevon, you have a little bit more about the weapon. You don't? Okay. Tantrum.
I gave Sam
I did notice early on in the fight, which might be what you had.
So Tantrum's weapon was clipping the floor.
Yeah, the punch wasn't retracting, it looked like. And you know, I think that the tactics were a quick change to be a wedge, essentially,
Yep.
a pin brick, because they couldn't retract the puncher and do what they're kind of intending to do, what they did to Hydra. I think that the intention was probably get underneath endgame and poke it.
And see what happened.
And the weapon sticking
that,
out
right?
further underneath the robot, like they set it up in such a way where the weapon would actually hit the floor. It would go out the bottom of the robot, so maybe they hopefully would catch forks. Because that's the endless battle at this point when you're fighting a bot like Endgame.
I do remember that happening.
Plays
actually,
that fork meta.
See, there you go. There you go.
I won't question their choices, because I build one very different robot that is irrelevant from how Tantrum works. But it feels odd to me that it hits the floor, and maybe potentially not good in case the punch dies. But I'm assuming there's purposes that that it provides more benefits, because they don't do a lot of things by accident.
It's actually an RA2 thing where they can clip the floor and it's fine.
There you go. I thought about that. And I'm glad you said it.
It all comes full circle.
You'll know it next series when Tantrum's just driving up walls and things to escape other robots. And
when they figured out how to stack all the batteries on top of each other instead of
dude, caster armor's gonna win every time.
They basically already have it practically, is what it feels like.
I mean, well, you say that, but we saw Tantrum's face get broken in half.
I know.
First time it's ever happened.
Peeled.
Yeah,
it
got sunburn.
It peeled open like pistachio. It like you're ripping the shell apart. It was.
I never thought I'd hear it.
They're it's quiet because it always does its business and wins. But I think that the power in Endgame's weapon is higher than a lot of people are running. I mean, now Witch Doctor's got its full 250, however much they're using, and you're seeing that as well. But Endgame, when it needs to, has the power to go through a lot of stuff.
But with all that said, it still wasn't good enough to knock anything out.
No,
because Tantrum pushed it around at the end of this fight, and honestly, tenterhooks at the end of this fight, it was so damn close. I will also say this is how they decided to start session 13 with this fight.
And I know our resident stand-in David was also extremely stressed out about this fight because it's his favorite robot. So
I have actually got written down in the little book of broken dreams some scoring here, and I think it must be how I would have scored the match. So if you'll indulge me, damage 4-1 in favor of Endgame.
Fair.
Control 2-1 in favor of Tantrum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Aggression 2-1 in favor of Tantrum.
Yep.
It's still a win to Endgame 6-5.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I could see that, or I could see a flip to aggression towards Endgame just from the weapon usage aspect.
Correct.
Where it's just kind of the whole avert driving forward earns a lot of points, which is a thing in the scoring category right now. But
don't knock it.
While it is right, it helps.
Jonathan, you said earlier in the season you wanted to fight Endgame. Is that still the case?
I would say, yeah.
Okay.
At the time,
it wouldn't happen until the semis, if possible.
Right.
It would take some doing. So
I think also, think of where we were at that point after coming off of one good win and all of the past years stuff that 100%. We've already talked about.
You really have to ask what Endgame would do, though, because setup wise, I don't know if they have much. They could put on some big sheets of
the forks.
They're not
big sheets of plastic on the front with no forks running, and then just sort of tip over onto their face. But
it's a choice because I know they're not going to do nothing. Like they're way too prepared to have nothing, and so it'll be a fight. I think it'll be a good fight. But at the time, it was we wanted to express confidence in what we knew Huge could do, and you aim for the top, and Endgame as the Golden Bolt winners, and they're number one coming into the season. I think take a page out of Endgame's playbook. They walk in, they win one fight, and they call out the top guy. Yeah. We were really trying to show how we feel differently about this Huge and what we wanted this season to be, and set a tone. And like I was talking about momentum. I still want to fight them because the whole point of going to BattleBots is to compare yourself to the best people.
Correct.
Huge is well aimed at the best people, and that we're in a good spot for it. And Endgame is still really scary and it's still really, really good. But that's just the opportunity of the moment, because when you lose to the number one, it's expected. So you've got nothing.
It's a free shot, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Tantrum...
It's just for a couple of years. Mammoth, Hydra, Kraken, Riptide, Retrograde, Switchback. It felt like it'd been a long time since we were fighting, anybody Endgame-esque. Yeah, White Forces and Hypershocks and Whiplash. Like, really top people. Hydra basically being the last one, and I wanted to go at someone on that level again.
Still waiting for that Hydra rematch, that true Hydra rematch.
I'm not sure it's worth it for the amount of chatter it would make, but it'd be a different fight, and it'd be what I asked.
I'm very curious that wasn't one of the fights that they rematched.
He thinks you're going to fight
a couple controversies
next season. Yeah, he thinks you're his schedule for next season.
Oh, I'm sure. Next season it'll be 4 people we lost to. Just to see what New Huge can do, right? Because like I told Jake after the whole bike rack thing, it's that Huge spun up in like 18 seconds.
Yeah.
Like you had nothing to be afraid of in the first place.
True.
So yeah.
Tantrum ends its season at 1-4 and is out.
Yeah.
It's been a rough one.
They have had the schedule from hell.
Yeah. Technically not the strongest schedule, apparently, because I think Black Dragons, I think somebody did a calculation that Black Dragons had the hardest schedule. Based off of
their opponent's wins. But
I think
if
it only counts for this season. Yeah,
on paper Tantrum has one of the hardest alongside probably Whiplash.
Yeah, those are the 2 that have really had a stinker. And to top it all off, they fight Endgame, and just to make it a little bit easier for them.
That's the thing, is you can't even take back some major lesson of like massive improvements. It's like, well, we lost Endgame just like we did last year and just like the year before, and it's you get matched up with this this person is really going to counter you well, and so it's like it's 1-4 when you look at the numbers, but when you're fighting the end games of the world, you're not a 1-4 robot. You're fighting for the people's enjoyment against the other best people, and that's how I think it's practically a roulette wheel when it comes down to fights at that level, because then they turn around and they go, the Hydra fight wasn't close, and they beat Hydra cleanly. And that's like the power of Tantrum, and it just sucks that when you have a rough season, you get narratives, and I think that if it was full true round robin, they'd have a very, very positive record.
Well, they still have a banner that can't be taken away. They still had that.
This is what I was going to say. They had nothing to prove this series. Honestly, they won BattleBots.
They won BattleBots unbeaten, and we're going to retire the robot, and they got an extra season out of it.
Interesting parallel too with your team, where like they figured, what, this bot isn't working, maybe we move on to something else, and I think that's where they're going. I know that Aaron has teased at Norwalk that they're coming with possibly working on those that with the Torps and becoming the twins or something like that. I know he's working on that idea, so this may be the last time we see Tantrum in the main season. It would be heartbreaking, but hey, got to move on.
There's an interesting conversation to be had about why we do this, that I'm not going to get totally into, but when bringing a unique robot, a lot of the initial push is to make it work in the first place and see it do what it was supposed to do.
Yes.
And then once it's good, that transitioning that into a push to make it incrementally better, it's a totally different bit of motivation. Whereas if you're always aiming of, I'm going to build a vert, you're kind of intending to get a little bit better every single year. And I think that, I can see why, if the desire has always been just to make Tantrum work and make Blip work and do interesting things, that staring down a now, perpetual history of make Tantrum a little bit better isn't going to be the most thrilling thing. Because I feel the same, it was, do we really want to do huge more? It was like, do we really want to keep honing a thing versus chasing some new idea?
Yeah. Well, so
Endgame's next fight is Copperhead, right?
It is, yeah.
So
tough one for them. I think Copperhead is a robot that suits Endgame. We saw Minotaur deal with it last year. I'm not comparing the two because it's hard to compare one with the other, but it's got a chance. I think it's got a good chance, Copperhead.
I think Endgame's ground game is infinitely better than last year as well this year. And
why don't they just call it ground game? That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Ground game. Make it brown.
Yeah, it's a brown end game. It's called ground game. I love
April
it.
Fools next year. Let's make it happen.
There you go. Someone who's good with Photoshop could do that.
That sounds like one of the bots you'd buy from a vendor on the street, and this is a battle bot.
Hey, you want to buy some ground game?
Yeah. It's like how huge we called it, humongous or something like that. Just not quite.
There's a
bootleg
RR2 pack, isn't there? That's similar.
Move on quickly before
we could go down that rabbit hole.
There's a line of bootleg toys, like little wooden frame toys.
Yes.
And First of all, I was never asked, but there is a huge, and they named it Mammoth because I don't think they knew that Mammoth was a taken
huge-looking thing called Mammoth.
A taken name, and it was just like Ricky and I were just like, well, what do we do? It's kind of both of us, and I think there's a Copperhead clone named Diamondback and a Bronco clone and stuff, but this was the only one where
I'm looking at them now. Yours is called Colossus. That's a lie.
No, they changed it. They changed it. They renamed it.
It was indeed called Mammoth for a while.
These are kind of dope, though.
We have got a few.
There's a Facebook group for them where someone had bought the Huge and fought the Tombstone with, and they posted like, the blade broke. How do I fix this? And I refrained from commenting because it's not my toy, right?
Oh,
but I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how it goes. When
shame. Sorry.
Like it's just like the real one. The blade's gonna not survive. Going weapon to weapon with a tombstone, like that's
like we talked at the beginning of the episode, and you looked at Witch Doctor's hub, and it's like, I don't want that to happen to me.
Right.
Please.
If you buy a toy from China, don't fight it against its hard counter, or it might break. Because turns out,
also, if you find instructions for those things, you're doing well.
Yeah, they're neat things. I wish we were a part of it, and it would be a more above board thing. And frankly, that's the type of thing that I wish BattleBots would offer. But
that's a separate conversation.
Is
I
what
have
it
thoughts
is
on that. So
absolutely. Your opponents, Jonathan, Mad Catter.
Yes.
Finally, a metavert.
We've made it. To the promised land. And the whole bracket is metaverts. The entire side of the bracket left is metaverts. So.
I was going to say there is a question there was a question that we did get from Carl Larson, K Larson 888 on Twitter, where they kind of say that like your path to the nut seems to be a lot of metaverts. It seems to be loaded with strong spinners. I mean, is there any of them that kind of worried you? Does this one worry you? Or do you just wipe the table with them?
They all do for different reasons, and in the same sense, it's totally up the alley of not taking anything for granted. So the different reasons are for Mad Catter, it's the arm. You don't know what's going to end up on it. Jackpot had teased photos of a bike rack that they could attach to their lifting arms.
Sure.
Endgame is amazingly prepared, so we know they have things. We have, we don't hit the hardest of everybody, and Copperhead's a brick. Like there's so many people on our side of the bracket that can cause unique problems. And this was, it was interesting because it had been so long since we prepared to fight a vertical spinner, and we'd spent, as I mentioned way earlier, so long talking about every anti-meta, every weird prepared for anything. We hadn't spent a long time talking about the vertical spinners.
I can't say it this week because it'll be next week, but Jevin, I think you told me, or somebody showed me, that there's a funny moment coming in the next after the next road to the giant nut. That come on, man.
We'll save that for next week.
We have some fun on that, but in this fight, we're looking at the kind of plans and just like, is it really just do nothing and just run huge out there as it is? So we fashioned up some little extra chin Tegris just in case they bounce up or they, find some way to put the vert higher or something like that. We run a little bit of config like that, but it's that was a lot of what that round 32 pressure was for us. Was we know at local events you get through the first 2 rounds and then you're golden from there.
Absolutely.
We always call it fall up a bracket. We've made it past round 1. We beat the weird thing.
Now it's time for
now we're here.
Now it's business time.
Right. And it's one fight at a time. So Mad Catter is doing the same thing we always do. Scope out the armor, scope out how everything's attached. What do we want to hit? What are the points we need to hit? And then what do we need to prepare for? And so, they were talking attachments, and they have some attachment things. There's stuff duct tape to it. There's all sorts of things that the pre-fight shenanigans always have. But at the end of the day, it's a vertical spinner. So that puts the ball in our court in a way that it hadn't been, arguably the fusion fight, but that has its own risks. Like, damn, all right, here we are. Let's see what the top guys have.
Speaking of the top guys, even if let's say you get through the round of 16, your round of 8 opponents either Witch Doctor or LockJaw, so you get another one.
Let's see what the really top guys have, and
then it could be Endgame or Riptide again. Hypershock again.
What is it? Endgame, Riptide, Copperhead, and Hypershock. Yeah, so
It's just filth, isn't it? It's just,
Yeah.
it really
Riptide's
is.
the tallest of all of them, and
I mean, we saw what happened
right.
last year, right? So who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But and that's the thing, preventing what happened last time. Hypershock really had us on the ropes in our fight with them. Like it's the same thing as we mentioned, or as I mentioned for Blip. It's like there are no foregone conclusions because everyone is trying. They're not just going to die. They're not just going to choose to die. They have to adapt, and they're all getting better at adapting and coming up with stuff. And it's like we have to be very mindful of that going in, or we're going to get blindsided one of these days. And you don't want to get blindsided in the tournament. So,
No. Okay, Jonathan, I'm very aware this has been one of probably the longest podcasts of the season, and I'm very thankful for it because
there was a lot to talk about.
It's been a sheer delight. We have two very special questions that we've picked out.
Okay.
We thought this would be right up your street. Okay.
Yeah.
So our first
nice like decompression from all this.
Really is. So our first question.
We got direct messaged for this.
We did. It's a direct message from Jonas Kurtz.
Oh goodness.
He knows where this is going.
And Jonas asks, which is your favorite beetle out of these? Snappy, Sir Lancerfrog, or Ryukushin? Pick your favorite.
Always on the spot now.
Which one?
I'll give a good
Make one
reason
friend and
behind
two
it.
enemies.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I love all of them.
Of course.
Well, yeah.
And I've, whenever they ask for help, I try and provide it and cheer them on and everything. I will say that of that group of friends, Snappy was the first of the three that existed for me to cheer on as someone who had done robot video games and said, nah, I'm going to go build real stuff. And I think seeing other people make that jump, and one of them was Mike Jeffries. I knew him.
Yeah, he's another one that's got a background in RA too. That's what I mean. It's like
Mike
these people.
Jeffries.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, we've heard of him, right? I think.
And they're on a podcast. Adam Wrigley was talking about that he knows Matt Boris through RoboCast 2. That's how Bots FC got formed. Snappy was the first one I was rooting for of the three, and it has a very warm place in my heart because of that. Yeah. Will I say it's my 100% favorite? Pick a favorite child? No. I love all three of them, but Snappy was the first one I was rooting for as a three. Okay. And I think in some ways is, help paving the way to say that this is an approachable enough sport to go try and do something. And obviously we're fairly sky's the limit people when it comes to doing something. And we took huge all the way. To BattleBots, but it's a road paved with a lot of other people who showed us that you could go do that. So
fair, a fair decision. The last question we have, which we had a little conversation about pre-recording, but we'll delve in a little bit. Jack, builder of Choppy Boy and one of the runners of the BattleBots wiki, asks, "What is your favorite SpongeBob episode?"
Yeah, so for people who don't know, the original team theme of Team Huge was Gold Team Rules, which my girlfriend Maddie, who you'll see on every season of BattleBots with us, came up with as a team idea name because we had no idea what to name it. And it was one throwaway gag in an episode from like 1999 of SpongeBob. And you can tell exactly the 2-year age range people fall into, whether or not they understand what we're talking about or not.
Jevin has no idea.
I do.
I don't know.
It's not even that funny, but it's just funny because you name your team rules. I'm explaining the joke. Anyways, it was the right time for me when I was a little kid. It resonates with all of us. So for me, there was an episode of SpongeBob where it's the Krabby Patty training video.
Yes.
And they go through, because the Krabby Patty is a secret formula. That's the whole joke. And they go through this entire 15-minute thing that they're going to say the formula, and then they get to the end of the episode and they say, and the formula is, and it just cuts and then the credits. I mean, I was like 6 years old. I legitimately thought there was a problem with the television. Cut out. like that they were gonna say it. And I felt very betrayed and tried to find it again on the guide and watched it again. because it was 1990 whatever, and there's no on demand or anything.
Mhm.
So wait for it to come back on TV and watch it again, and then it kind of clicked that was the joke. But so from a betrayed 7-year-old, that's always a warm spot of a happy time watching SpongeBob and not worrying about the world and building robots out of Lego on the floor, because I was still a BattleBots obsessed little kid at the time. So
Oh yeah.
Some of us never grow out of that, do they, Jevon?
Yeah.
Nope.
Jonathan, this has been a sheer. I don't think I've laughed so much this whole season. And thank you for an incredible insight into so many different facets of not just your robot, but also your life outside of robots as well. This has been a joy, and good luck for the rest of the season. It's not over yet. What's going on?
No, we're not out yet. We're still here. Usually when I'm on the pod, it's like, yeah, we had a great year. It's like week 10. So thank you all. It's been a ton of fun.
Thank you, dude. With all that said, I've been Sam 64.
I've been Steve the American Killjoy.
I've been World of Woodrow.
I've been Jonathan Schultz from that robot fighting TV show we watch sometimes.
And the three of us will see you next week soon for more round of 32 action.
Yeah. Also, cute eyes win.
After we win the net, we're done angry.
Okay, there we go. We'll see you then, folks, for more BattleBots.